Check one, check two, check three. Hello, 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 hello. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey, check, check, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Hey, hey, check, check, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check, 1 2 3 1 2 3. This should be mic number 8. Number 8. Mic number 8. Check, check, 1 2 1 2 3. Check, check. Hey, hey. Is that 0? Okay. Check, check. Hello, hello, hello. 1 2 1 2. Check, check. Hey, hey. 1 2. Check, check. Hey, hey. 1 2 1 2 1 2. And remember to keep it at 0. Keep it at 0. Check, check. 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay, I turned the gain up on this one a little bit. It's about like 3 clicks. Okay, turning off this one. Make sure that it's not muted. Make sure that the channel's on. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Hey, hey. So this is at 0. Okay. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. I'm going to raise the gain a little bit on this one. Check, 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 1 2 1 2. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey. Check, check, 1 2 3. 1 2. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check. Should be good for now. Turning off mic number 1. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hey, hey. Check, check, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Let me know when we're at 0, Jack. This should be mic number 2. Okay, we're at 0. Okay. Turning it up because it's a little low. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey. Check, check. Sounds better? Okay. Turning off mic number 2. Check, 1 2 3. Hey, hey. Check, check. 1 2 3. Let me know when we're at 0. Check, check, 1 2. This should be mic number 3. Okay. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hey, hey. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hey, hey. I boosted it a little bit. Check, check, 1 2 3. Turning off mic 3. Mic number 4. Check, check. Mic number 4. Let me know when we're at 0. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Check, check. We're at 0. Okay. I'm going to turn this one up a lot. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Hey, hey. Check, check, 1 2 3 1 2. Check, check. Hey, hey. 1 2 3. Check, check. 1 2. Check, check, 1 2 3. Hey, hey. Okay, that sounds better. I'm going to turn mic 4 off. check. Mic number 5. Number 5, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hey, let me know when we're at 0. Check, check. We're at 0. I'm going to turn it up because it's a little low. Hey. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hey. Hello. Check, check. So roll the gain back on this one a little bit. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hey. Hello. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, sounds better. We'll just need to mess with the EQing on this one because it sounds a little too mid-rangey. Okay. Next mic. Check, check. Microphone number 6. Hey. Hello. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Let me know when we're at 0 on the fader. Check, check. Hey. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey. Check, check. Okay, we're at 0. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hey. Hello. Check, check. Hey. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Okay, just need to roll back the gain a little bit on this channel. We should be good. Check, check. Turning off mic. And this is microphone number 7. Number 7, check, check. Hey. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2. Microphone number 7. Number 7. Hey. Check, check. Number 7. Check, check. 1, 2. Okay. Let's set me at unity. This one needs to go up for sure. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey. Let me know when you're at 0. You're at 0. Okay. 1, 2. Check, check. Hey. 1, 2. Check, check. Okay. This one's as high up as we can go, so we might need to add some extra one on top. Check, check.
There you go.
1, 2, 3. Do
He's
you
probably
hear
got you
it?
turned down up there.
1, 2, 3. I don't know.
So, and that'll be it.
Okay.
That's all you need to do. Everything else for the sound will be up to the sound guy. He'll have
Okay.
to turn you up and.
And who is the sound guy?
The SMSU sound guy is a new guy. I think his name is Mario. I just met him today.
Hello, Michael. The lapel mics? Yeah?
This is for
Yeah?
Kurt Collins. Yep.
Kurt is right there.
So find whatever you're comfortable with. You gotta find your name.
Oh, if you don't mind, excuse me. Can you please bring us some water? I mean, I could, but I don't want to jump.
Oh, no, go sit down. She nearly killed herself.
So we are 8. We are 8. So yeah, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Like I said,
So
he's got turned off.
Hey, we need to talk, but I know you're busy now. Maybe after this.
Yeah.
I need to talk to several of you guys. The challenge now is for me not to be on campus. So at one time I'm in my office, I see you walk into the parking garage one afternoon.
I have been
But
meeting with a crazy person for the last. Oh man.
All right. Yeah.
Like,
So I need to turn it off now.
Yeah, you can turn it off. But that's perfect. You got it clipped up there nice.
Thank you. So let's give everybody one of these. I think we need. Okay. So let me just. Here.
Thank you.
One. Kurt. There's one here. And me. And. Maurice.
And then does it stay on the entire time or only when I'm talking?
Yeah, when you're, it'll be on the whole time. If you do want to say something, you won't be able to hear. You can just turn it off.
Weren't calculated right, and now it looks a lot better than it did.
No.
Oh, something. Oh, too bad. I was
He
kind
just he just no. So what it says is the following. So people who took the lesson in VR did significantly worse, like statistically significant
Right.
worse than the
But he
other.
said the numbers weren't calculated properly.
No, they were.
Oh.
But then inside the group of people who took the lesson in VR, the gamers did significantly better,
Yes,
not worse.
That's what he did
Yeah.
say. That was true.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's like,
So it didn't actually solve.
it didn't solve anything.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I mean, there are reasons. For example, if you have 1 hour to talk about this stuff in class as opposed to 9 minutes in a vid, there's a difference. And the other thing is that people paid a lot of attention to the medium because it was their first brush with VR.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
they
there was a
forgot to
lot
pay
learn
attention.
about just doing it.
Yeah. Oh God.
Well,
Woohoo.
okay.
All right. Yep. Hello.
I went through every other seat, so I figured this was it.
Yep. Where else but next to me, Kurt?
And I'm going to pin this on my front of my shirt.
And turn it on and wait. Woo. Okay. How about now? Maybe not.
Well, he can adjust it, so he'll
Okay.
mess with it once everybody's got theirs on.
1, 2,
'Cause as
3.
we turn,
1,
as
2,
we turn
3.
them all on, then we'll raise the noise, so we'll have to make the adjustments once.
Mahela, since we're going to live stream this, when we do the open Q&A session, is it okay if, as people have
We should
questions
require
for
all
the
the guys
audience,
to wear
we take them one at a time, but have that person walk up to you, ask you the question, and then you can then bring it to the panel?
I think the best way would be if we put the microphone to the audience and have the audience come to the microphone and ask the
So
question.
right here, maybe?
Usually it's turned around towards the audience.
I just don't know if when they're live streaming it, if
let's ask James, but I think that the advantage of that is that we are not wasting time reframing. I mean, okay, what did you just say? Can you repeat the question? No, let them ask.
I guess we'll find out. Talk to me next time. No, it's great.
Go to.
I don't have to do
and
anything
then
else. Just
nothing else.
turn it on.
So we're going to the VR studio next week.
Yeah.
On Monday.
On Monday, that's going to be really exciting. That's in what, Burbank?
Burbank, yeah.
Did you follow the questions to me? I didn't get the
You didn't get them?
Yeah, because they said they send a Friday.
She did send them.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let me forward them because she
that
did.
I know, yeah.
Right, she did send them, so I will just forward them.
Let me see. I got it from Tracy.
Right,
Is
and
this
if
the
you
one?
and if you go down, 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 down.
Down, down, down.
Yeah, here are the
Okay,
questions.
down here. Okay, I got it.
Great. Sounds good. All right.
You know, it was a nice conference. First off, that Las Vegas Convention Center was bigger than LA or Anaheim, any of the ones I've been to. And they filled it. You know.
Sorry, gotta do. I forgot to do it before.
Well, it was mostly that you'd run into a fairly sizable booth. They'd have a green screen that rolled all the way to the floor, on the floor, and then monitors, right? So there'd be a person on the green screen, an actual person, and you look up at the monitor and you notice that she's there, and then there's this car, right? The car's not there, so it's been matted over, and it's perfect, right? I mean, the car is looking good. In fact, I'm used to going to audio conferences, not so much something so visual. I came off realizing that nothing is real anymore, you know. But anyway, the car's sitting there, and then just for fun, they kind of peel back part of the metal on the car. You know, it's animated, and there's the engine and all this other stuff. In the meantime, you look down at the real thing. There's nothing there.
All she's got to do is know where to point.
Yeah.
If you guys want to make sure your belt packs are turned on, so
Okay.
getting ready for the sound check.
So
Just the top button there. And just that switch right there.
Sorry about that.
I'm good.
Test 2,
I'm
3,
good.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. So later on, we walked by a booth, same kind of arrangement, except it wasn't a green screen, it was a black screen that had a grid on it. And this company
We need a little cup holder.
was
Right? These are fancy
demonstrating
chairs, though. I like that.
Yeah,
a form of
they have some of these in the wedge and other areas. It's nice because they've got the plugs and stuff.
onto the grid.
And then what's this
so that the
contraption
talent
for?
knows where
I think it's for a
Could you eat?
desk.
No, my food's
Oh,
there.
that
So you
makes
can
sense.
put a-
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can
because
just
you
pick
can
it up.
tell that there's
Or it
an
could just be a
staring
handy
at
pen holder.
Actually,
There you
You
go.
know, they had
When wouldn't you need that?
the person who was doing the demonstration. Again, they had an F1 car or something on with them, and he would move towards the F1 car and like step on it. and,
Yeah.
And there is software that will like move it around a little bit to keep that from
I
happening.
did write a
but that
couple
isn't
reminders.
the answer for scale.
What do you call it? Learning tree or learning
That
path
is really the
instead of
answer.
remediation?
But then he did
Learning
another
path.
one where
So you
could
go to a
actually
lower
see,
level
like, where
learning
the feet
path.
of a robot was. That was again on the screen perfectly, but not so much there. Yes. Yeah.
So how is it?
Yeah, I'm talking to him and it's away from where you are. There.
Like barely-
Is that all right? Does that look all right?
But I did ask.
Okay.
It's funny. You had to spin the wheel.
2, 3, 4,
Cody
5,
radio
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
to get
Is that
anything,
working?
and you
Okay.
have to ask about a TV show. I don't know anything about TV show. I actually knew the answer.
2, 3, 4, 5.
What city?
Sing
does
a
The
song in
Simpsons
chorus.
Yeah.
I was just there. Springfield. And they said, what's
Then there were
state?
all these displays
Apparently it's all over the
that
place.
were curved,
Yeah,
either
that was
concave
the
or
thing. There was
convex.
no state
and they were made up.
Oh, really? So
one
where's it
that
supposed to
we saw was made up of these.
Art or
They had like a rubber matting material behind them, and then LEDs implanted in them, and actually they kind of fit together like jigsaw puzzles.
No, I end up
saw
working
that
a lot with the art
in
department,
Bangkok
though.
like
Yeah,
3
that makes
weeks ago, where they had it. It was
And I like their
what they
Okay.
did is they could put the LEDs on the outside of the
I'm
window,
gonna
and you
stand
could
up.
look through and look out, but the LEDs would play over the front. They were just
Wow.
they were
that's
just
true.
a
I don't think
panel
So yeah,
that
so
was
one of the things
just.
I told Jonathan is he's got to make those units,
Oh.
1 and 2, available as copies so he can review it. Well, he didn't have that on his to-do
Sure.
list. I go, yeah, I'm giving a midterm on Monday.
Okay.
I need one, all right, yeah, I need 1 and 2 open.
All at once?
So
We'll start with Michaela and then.
Okay, I'm talking. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Obviously, yes.
Okay.
Done. You go.
It's my turn. Okay, my name is Professor Kirk Collins. For the sound check. You're on the panel. Sounds good.
And I'm Scott Pants, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm with the panel, but I can't hear myself, but I don't need to hear. 2, 3,
Will be on
4, 5.
camera.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be all right.
Well,
2,
that
3,
sounds
4.
like
Can you
a
get?
plan. Are the
Ah,
planning
there we
to
go.
have
2,
more
3,
of
4, 5,
that,
6. Good. Thanks.
CRT thing?
Your turn.
That's over, right?
I know.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Much
It
cooler.
was really fun, yeah. And walking on the board. Oh, we all can think about some other events we can go together.
You keep saying that. You never tell me about it.
Well, now that I'm not in IT, I need to
Michael's
apply
not
for
paying
the
attention.
IT support.
Okay.
Michael, I think you're up for
Tense right
Oh, no, we're chatting.
Where's the porta potty?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, right.
No, don't worry. They could do it from there. Don't worry about it.
Do you want us to speak as if we're in a classroom, like speaking loudly, or?
Louder?
You want teacher voices? You want
Teacher voices. Yes.
Hey, James,
Yeah.
All right.
you're not going to
Yeah,
shred
we
that
used to-
poster of us.
We
up
use the
there
teacher
afterwards.
voices. We don't really need to be mic'd.
That's yeah. It's true. We don't.
Okay, good. You laminate it.
Come work
And you hang it up in front of Fowl Library for like a year or two.
blowing at like
All right.
65 decibels.
You're not
Yeah.
shredding it without me.
I
If
noticed
I don't
that
want mine, I want
2 years
his.
back when I was going to teach a class there. The sound is
The
much
big
worse
Sharpie.
in your building than any other.
It
I mean,
is. Well, you know, we have all those I
hear
panels
you.
too. They brought in all those
Yeah.
sound panels. and
Yeah,
stuff, it's and you
No,
can
I
hear
know.
the feedback. More.
Yeah,
You hear the feedback, then you're fine. No, that whole thing about the being able to project the images onto a grid. Like, I mean, I'm imagining a fake table in front of us
Right.
where we reach down and grab a water.
Yeah,
I mean,
goes
how
through
many takes would it take
to
for you
face
to go,
change.
okay, no, you got to be a little bit more to the left. And
Right,
so I'm trying
yeah.
to
It's
interesting,
spot
you
it
told
on the
me-
floor and
Yeah.
go. That would be
About your
that's
equilibrium,
so much
how
by
you already-
guess
and
by
the
golly.
talent can't be looking at a.
And I looked. I mean, that's what the
Yeah.
textbook
That
does,
kind of
so
restricts their.
it's just, I just
Yeah, it looks like
Feel the
Saturday
play.
Night Live.
Yeah, right.
So, what
Yeah.
did you
lost
say?
that.
Yeah.
We're gonna just focus on equilibrium.
That's
as
right.
Equilibrium issue instead of, but I see the textbook doesn't. In fact, I just had Irene go get me the 2018 new edition. Well, it's not green though. It's the same color actually.
Well, what they have posted.
So is anyone
Not the
going
one
up
the
to the
books-
Sonoma thing?
She got me a 2018. I didn't look at it, but it's.
Too complicated
Yeah,
and expensive.
That's the one they just
Do you wanna
updated,
go?
right?
You're the one who told me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said.
You know, they looked like they were doing some
so-
interesting things.
I haven't
They
looked at that. I figured
honestly, when we saw
Do
them
they
last
have any,
summer, it looked like they were
ancillary
a
stuff?
couple years behind us.
They do.
With,
You have to
but
go
really
online.
much better at doing
And
gimmicks
they
than we were.
That's true.
They-
So
they
the
have files
flashy
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
If you wanna go,
Well, you
Now,
can
now that I'm
install.
Mr. PowerPoint.
I mean, I
you have
can't
a
go, but
professor login.
Can you go?
You can log in and they have like
I'm
instructors
busy.
and stuff. It's
Can
on
you
their
go,
website.
Scott?
What are you
I did
talking
that for my
about?
inorganic.
I looked at it and it
Sonoma is
Oh,
put together.
Sonoma. Oh, I can't stand it. No.
Yeah, put together some show where they're doing their slant on technology.
here's
And they
the-
work with a couple
if
of
I wanna
companies really
erase
closely. I
something,
mean,
Yeah,
That's
they, they do that better.
Here's
than
what
we
I've
do.
learned to do.
yeah,
So
but
I
almost
bring a
too
text box
closely because
over
it's
it,
sort
and
of
then I
like
go
you
fill
can do
white,
any
and then
solution
it's
you
gone.
want as long as it involves our technology.
Oh.
You know, and that
Yeah.
tends to
That's
be
But
That
that's the
tends
only
to
way
be
to
a
do it.
problem.
Because the only thing is if you shift,
sure.
yeah,
You tell us when.
it's still there, but not over the white.
You tell us when we should start,
Huh?
okay?
No, I'll have to show you. I'll have to show it to you. No, I don't have that issue.
But you can group the image.
No, but everything's already grouped. It's already grouped.
Excellent.
It's only
So
one,
this is
yeah.
Cal State Sonoma.
I want to
Yeah,
edit the end.
yeah.
I want to erase.
Yeah. And I mean, they did. I can't even remember what they did.
Hi,
It was
But I can
pretty,
do what I'm doing.
They
Yeah.
did mixed reality. So if you remember, Sarah Cassis is the one that did mixed reality. So
Hi everyone, I just want to let you know that our faculty panel discussion will be starting in about 7 minutes. So if you'd like to make your way to the center of the room, we will also be live streaming this
teaching related,
faculty
wasn't
panel
it?
discussion. It is focused on teaching
Well,
and learning
that's a good
technologies
thing.
across disciplines. So we got a great panel here today. We will be
K-12
taking
teaching kind of stuff.
questions from the audience at the very end. That'll be about 1:30. So
And
again, in
that
about
seems to be a, that
6
seems
to
to be a
7 minutes, we will be
problem
starting
that
our
a
faculty
lot
panel
of,
discussion.
Cal
Thank you.
States are facing. It's like, how do you give students the ability to kind of student teach without being student teaching? You know, that would be
Yeah.
something where if we could kind of crack that nut, that would be, you know, that how do we teach to a virtual audience here and get feedback from that and do it with the VR goggles on and not do the puppets that
yeah.
Come back.
so what they do is they have a company, and who was it? Is it Long Beach or who does it? Fullerton or somebody does it
Brakeman.
down here. And what they do
He took it
is
with
they
him.
contract with this company, and so then they'll put on the VR goggles and they'll be looking out
I still
on
get weirded out when I hear people
a
talking on the
sparse
telephone in the
classroom. Let's say
bathroom.
6 or 7 students across the front.
Do you think the person on
And
the other
then
end
what they do
can't
is they
hear
have,
where
like
you
voice actors, maybe 2 voice actors that will voice the different characters. So the voice actor has to be live.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's all
Okay,
live. So then,
okay.
you know, the person will go out and they'll start talking about something with Mr. Trump and stuff. And the ones that we saw tended to be much more, you know, elevated in the level of understanding that the
I didn't
kids
get one.
in
Did
the
you get one?
audience knew
Oh.
than would really be real. But what we were talking about is it doesn't scale. If I've got
actually 3.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be live in about 4 minutes for our first panel discussion at 12:30 on faculty and technology. We'll be live on Facebook and Instagram and on our homepage. So please, if you have some social media, get it out to your friends. And we'll be live in about 4 minutes. Thank you.
Something here is going to be the right.
She's your student. Yeah, she works at the
Sale or?
yeah, it was Sale, but it wasn't Sale anymore.
Oh, there's a clock on the back wall. So we
I'm
kinda
not
know.
sure. Could be that we're looking for a cue from somebody.
Oh, Mihail is getting the clue. There you go.
Trying to get her to come to our Loma Linda. There's a Loma Linda 5K run and walk. She used to come and help at the NAMI. Oh, here goes. Get her over there.
Hello, everybody. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this panel discussion. Welcome to those who are here in person and to those who are here virtually. My name is Mihaela Popescu. I'm a professor in the Department of Communication Studies. I'm also the faculty director of Academic Technologies and Innovation. And with me here are 7 incredible innovators who are constantly redefining teaching every single day with learning technologies and with their amazing teaching experiences. Before we introduce our panel speakers, I would like to acknowledge the tremendous effort that our team in ITS has put together in order to create this event. So here's to you, Tracy Medrano and James Trotter and Stephanie Binev Garcia and Claire McDonald. Please join me in thanking them for this amazing event. And now I would like to introduce our guests. So if you'll be kind enough to introduce yourself and the department you are hailing from, and then we will talk about your innovation. So please.
Hello, my name's Kurt Collins. I'm a professor in the design program in the Department of Art.
I'm Scott Vance. I teach music technology in the Department of Music.
I'm Terry Nelson. I teach French and Humanities in the Department of World Languages and Literatures.
My name is Ariana Kuhn, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology.
My name is Michael Chen. I'm here with two roles. I'm currently a professor in College of Education, teaching educational leadership and technology, but my previous role was the ATI director for the past 4+ years.
He used to be my boss.
My name is Larry Mink, and I'm professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and our project is focused on the general chemistry aspect.
I'm Andreas Barsdorf, also from the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry.
So each of you did something extraordinary. You used learning technologies, or you use, learning technology inspired innovations in a distinct way. And I would like to ask you, what is it that you were trying to solve? So what pedagogical issue you were trying to address with these technologies?
Well, I can start. I was involved in, or am involved in 2 virtual reality projects. And Ambrosia, our first project, one of the issues that we were trying to solve is that we needed to teach students how to perform a particular function that they would normally do, but they would do it out in the field. And transporting a class of students to a faraway location and equipping them to do this was really out of the question. So doing it through virtual reality, we enabled the student to have the experience without actually having the expense of traveling to the distant location.
I too worked on Ambrosia with my students. The VR environment is different than what we conventionally work with music technology. However, the need for communicating a story is nonetheless important and can be done through some particularly new spatial sound attributes that VR has. So my students were used to working with sound, but now they could work with spatial location in ways that previously were kind of unheard of. I'm kind of fortunate in that was kind of the last thing on my bucket list to work with. I really did want to do spatial location. Unfortunately, it wasn't as possible as it is today, and I'm having the time of my life, and so are my students.
My needs were a little bit more simple. I was teaching, or getting ready to teach a big class, a humanities class, and it was a class that's focused on a lot of speaking and debating. And so having 40, and at one point I had 62 students in a classroom, how do I get all of the students to be able to engage? And plus they had to work in teams. So how do I get them on a commuter campus to be able to have a space where they can communicate with each other in an informal atmosphere? And Blackboard is too associated for them with grades. Email is a little bit unwieldy. And so I was looking for some sort of tool that we could use that allows them to communicate in the ways that they communicate. So I chose a tool called Slack, which is used out in the workspace a lot. It's kind of the new thing in most big companies. It's replacing email, and it kind of contains all of those messages within an application, keeps it out of my email box, out of their email box, and the students love it.
So the pedagogical issue that I was trying to solve is the fact that we as professors create content. In my case, I'm the director of the Anthropology Museum here on campus, and I create exhibitions. And then there are faculty members that come into these exhibitions, they bring their classes, they design activities for their students to do, and then those exhibitions disappear. So the innovation that I was using is recording the exhibition content using 360-degree video and images so that people can continue visiting the exhibitions even though the exhibitions no longer exist.
the issues that I was trying to address is really more broad. It's not particularly really my teaching, because for the past 4 years, I've been really in the IT world. But when I first came in 2014, and I walked around the campus and looked at most of the classrooms and realized really the classrooms, even the new buildings on our campus, the classroom design is still from the 19th century way of teaching, with one professor teaching 40, 50 students. In some classrooms, the chairs are even bolted to the floor. So that means that you cannot move, but that's really at odds against really the more active learning principles that are really informing the teaching nowadays, that students need to be actively engaged in learning. They are no longer really just passively receiving information. So the challenge that I'm trying to address is how can classrooms, learning spaces, be renovated to support active learning activities.
And our project actually is a collaborative project with myself and Andreas and Jonathan Brooks from ATI. I guess you all know about ATI here. And our project was kind of evolved in the evolutionary aspect, in the sense that it's actually a follow-up of 2 previous CRT grants, which is course redesign technology with CSU system. The first one was in 2015, when Michael Chen came to my door and said, go do this. And that involved a summer institute in Sacramento with the other CSU campuses, which I attended. And from that one, came back and we adopted an open source, OpenStack textbook, which is a textbook which met the criteria for the course. It is free, was free to the student at the time, or is now, in fact. And it's an electronic version of it. And so we were getting away from a vendor textbook at the time. To do that, I also had to adopt an online system, which was not vendor specific at the time. So we had this going on, and the whole department then we all eventually adopted this open source textbook. Then came 2017, which another CRT grant came, and Michael said, go do something. And the something then was this project here that was the adaptive learning. It's adaptive learning technology that we're going to use. And the idea was to take the online homework system and now go, instead of being a non-adaptive, being an adaptive learning type environment where a student would answer a problem, and depending on their answer, they would go at what we call higher level problem. Depending on the answer, if it was correct, they would go then to the next topic. If it was not correct, then they would go in what we call a learning path to a lower level type system. So it's adaptive. When we were and that's what they mean by the adaptive, like somebody coming to an office hour and asking you a question, and depending on the question, you would go ahead and have your response, depending on the level. The idea is, could we do this online with this new type of technology? So we sat, and Andreas got involved and all, and we looked at vendor products that were out there, and there was problems in our sense, so it wasn't meeting our criteria. They're either large platform type, where they take the whole course content and you had essentially no control over it. It was rather expensive. These products are, there was no altering of it as far as faculty. You couldn't alter a term in it, which is common in chemistry. You couldn't alter the ordering of a question. You couldn't delete a question by the nature of their algorithm. So we decided, let's go ahead and see if we can make small unit adaptive learning that would be adaptive to the faculty. And so they would be able to change a word or change a numbering or change the order. And there is a vendor out there that we adopted their platform, but then it took a lot of effort to take our content and then place it into this, because this platform wasn't necessarily for our discipline, it was to any discipline. And that's what we've been working on. They're small unit type homework sets that are readily adapted. And in fact, we encountered this last week where Andreas had a problem in a unit and he had a concept, and I don't present that concept for another 3 weeks. So we were able to, okay, let's go ahead on your unit, use this question, on my unit, use this question, and that's what made it user-friendly to a faculty member. We have 5 faculty that teach the one discipline. We don't agree on necessarily the ordering of the material, and this allows you that flexibility. And that would be true for any discipline. And so that's kind of where we're at with regard to the type of units. The other thing that, also with regard to how you write these units, we were at a Fresno conference last month, and it had to do with inclusiveness and how we write our problems. And the person was a keynote speaker saying, well, here's something that is commonly, not correctly done in a lecture, and sure enough, I'm saying that's exactly what I would do. And that is, you'd have a problem, let's say in chemistry, that talked about like the gas laws. And the example you use, which is used throughout all the textbooks and homeworks, are like scuba diving. And they go, well, how many of your students actually scuba dive? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, they don't. Maybe if I was in San Diego or or some other Monterey, maybe. So we can go ahead now and think about that when we make our problems into these small units that would address the person's audience. So these are the types of things, or my feeling is that these could not only for like homework sets for any discipline, but upfront topics. So we're talking about the STEM, in particular chemistry or the STEM classes, the sciences, where you can have a student, not as a homework, but as an introductory to a topic. How many times does a student come up and say, I have no idea how this is applied to my interests? And we can now make these units so that instead of like a topic on, let's say, the gases, where if you're a kinesiology major, the majority in Gen Chem that are actually chemistry majors, the majority of the students, 80%, are not chemistry majors. We're a service class. So if you're a kinesiology student, here I'm going to go ahead and click here, and it'll take me to that topic pertaining to my interests, or if I'm a pre-med, or if I'm a biologist, or a mathematician, whatever. So you can have these upfront topics that we can use, or even as STEM, we could use it for advising if we develop these units, where a student wants to be a STEM major or any discipline, and they click on, and there's a map of the campus, and then they would have the advisors to the campus, just an adaptive in that sense for an advising, 2025 initiative. Here's where you'd go, here's the place, here's the person, the image. So you can do this for so many, implemented in a variety of ways. So that's what we're working on. And right now, this quarter, we're launching 10 units. That is the full quarter sequence for our second sequence in general chemistry with regard to small adaptive learning modules. So that's what we're doing.
And just to add on, the real challenge that I think it's focused on is getting the students the help when they need it. So they do the homework, and if they're having issues, they get the help. And it's not just help from Google or putting it into the search bar. It's something that we believe actually will help them with the problem. So it's kind of homework and office hours rolled into one.
You know what's fascinating? Please go ahead.
No, just video content was the other issue, because when we talk about going to a learning path, the video content in our discipline, this particular class, it was horrible. That's open source. We want this to be open source. That's the idea. That was the idea of the textbook. Free to the students in that sense. And so the video content that's open source is horrendous. So one of the big thrusts that we're doing is the development with the ATI of video content. And so to me, that's like incredibly difficult when I'm doing it. Much worse than sitting up here now. But that's what we're spending a lot of time on the video development for the small units that pertain directly to these units as far as content. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. What strikes me as fascinating is how adopting these technologies really opened up a space of possibility, a way of looking at problems in an entirely different way. And I'm curious about the challenges that you encountered when you were trying to do these things in a different way, right? Anybody would like to comment on challenges?
I have, throughout my teaching career, worked in a kind of project-based manner. Most of the time, the students learn a great deal more about delving into a particular project, making it their own, and observing the results. And then the rest of the class can observe the results, and we can have conversation about how one group's approach might have been slightly different than another, and certain areas of the project worked better because of that. I have the fortune of being associated with the Title V grant from Here to Career, and one of the areas that we worked in was project-based learning. It was kind of like organizing better what I had been doing all along, and really emphasizing the idea of small groups and communication between the students and conversing between the students. The idea of standing in front of them as the great sage, the sage on the stage, and telling them all of the wonderful wisdom I have has grown a little tiring after these years, and there's places for that, no question about it. But what's more exciting is watching them take the introductory knowledge that I might be helping to give them, and then working amongst themselves to see what views and how it works in a particular project. And if you're interested in project-based learning, I think that you should go ahead and contact Brian Heisterkamp with the Communication Studies Department. He's the head of the grant. And we are teaching a limited number of faculty methods for project-based learning and how it might be able to be approached from your discipline.
I'm hearing opportunities. Would anybody care to comment on challenges?
I can. So Slack is like, I always describe it to people as like email meets Facebook meets group chat or GroupMe or text messages, and students don't use email anymore. What they are really good at is text messaging and emojis. So I had to learn a whole new language. Google is my friend. I can just put in, what does this mean? And it tells me, because I have no idea what they're saying to each other. The other challenge I found is, as I've been talking about this, because it's been a terrific tool for teaching, faculty are extremely reluctant to try something new. And so about a month ago, I was doing a workshop at CSUN on using this particular pedagogy, and I had it all set up. I had my Slack team, and I invited all the faculty, and I actually had 3 student peer mentors come and participate in the games with the faculty. So they were playing it, and they're like, why aren't they using Slack? I could not. I had only 2 faculty who were willing to dive in and give it a try. But I find that if we meet the students on their terms, and we really want them to do something, we need to find something that's going to work for them. And so finding a tool that appeals to them, that doesn't appeal to me at my age with what I know, but appeals to them and with something that they're comfortable with, that's at a price point. Slack's free, so that's a good price point, that they can access, that makes a difference. If it's something that they also see usefulness in, to say, this is something that's being used in companies, then they can see that connection, and they just take to it like ducks to water. Faculty, not so much. I think I'd have to throw them into the lake to get them to swim, but it really does make a big difference for the students.
I would add to what Terry's saying, that for me, one of the biggest challenges in adopting the new technology is the technology itself. It takes a lot of work, and for the particular technology that I'm working with, which is the 360 video, stitching the 360 pictures, stitching them together is something beyond my personal capacities. So I've had to be very reliant on ATI team to help me out with that, and we're lucky here, so I guess that's an opportunity as well. Sorry, Mihaela. To have the ATI team behind us on these projects to be able to make them happen. So it's the technology itself that's been a challenge. 2 other challenges I would say, one of them is accessibility. So in using all these technologies, all of the information isn't there all the time about how to make these technologies accessible. So the technology that I'm using, the 360 photos, we're still figuring out how to make that as accessible as possible for the visually impaired, for example. And the other challenge I would say is price point. So the 360 photos stitched together that I'm using are really the most astounding when viewed in using virtual reality goggles like an Oculus Go or something like that. And the price point for that is what, like $200 at this point. So it's difficult to make that accessible, and so many people are unfamiliar with the technology. That's been another challenge.
Thank you.
I would say in teaching in active learning spaces, the challenge is really the way teachers have been teaching for years. So even though when we first started renovating active learning spaces, we always had this chicken and egg question. Do we really wait until teachers are ready and are asking for those spaces and then you renovate, or do you really create the spaces and then for teachers to go in there and teach and seeing the possibilities? So opportunities are abound, but really challenges really, I remember when we first did our first active learning space in PL 15, some instructors are scheduled to teach in them. When they got in there, look at the layout, they say, can we put it back into rows? Because this is how I know how to teach. And then also the second summer in 2016, we did 4 classrooms in the College of Education with active learning furnitures. They all have widths, so you are really sitting in some of those furnitures in the active learning space. But then when I go back to visit, those chairs and the tables are reconfigured into rows, all facing forward. So it's really the challenges are breaking out of that mentality that classrooms are configured for hundreds of years that way. Now you have the possibilities. Actually, one of the instructors who taught in active learning space is really saying, now when you see the furnitures can be reconfigured up flexible, my teaching methods can be flexible. It's really, the furniture layout is now really impacting the way they approach teaching to say, I don't have to teach this way always. I can try different things.
Can I speak to that? So I was in one of his classes this morning, and we were starting a brand new game, and so we'd had the classes, everything was lined up facing the podium, and I said to the students, oh no, now you're in the Pnyx in ancient Greece, you need to move these around, and they're like, oh, these move? And they were so excited about that, and just by reconfiguring the space, they moved into a different place in their heads. They were ready to play a game. They were ready to do something different. This wasn't going to be the same old, same old. The architecture of the space truly impacted their learning right away.
Yeah, the feedback from students really just like that. They said, now I don't have to sit in the same chair for the whole quarter and then listening to the same old professor talking, because now teachers are not doing just the stand-up and the talking anymore. They now give really up the control. They let students really feel the ownership of the space of the learning, because one of the principle of active learning is really minds-on always and hands-on sometimes. The key is really get them involved with the mind. Yeah.
This is such a great entry into my next question, because I was about to ask you, what difference does it make for students? So what evidence do you see that students are learning better or are more engaged or are, is it worth it really to invest so much time in this?
Well, after I taught 1 quarter in the space and I did a survey, and I will also interviewed some students. So there are some really good feedback. One of them is really just saying, now I see the possibilities. The monitors are no longer, because in the traditional classroom, the displaced monitors are owned by the professor only. Only if the professor asks you to go up to show something, you have that 5 minutes of ownership. But now in the active learning spaces, the technology is in the hands of students. So they feel empowered. They feel if I want to throw up something, I can quickly Google something and share it. And the students are a lot more engaged, and teaching is not only just from the teacher. I always emphasize constructive is the idea is really learning is constructed, it's not transmitted. Mm-hmm. So in the process of discussion, in the process of augmenting, and I know Terry does a lot of role play, and when you are in that role, you really are actively thinking how I should be in that role, because you're taking students out of the traditional role of students.
So one of the things we see with our homework is the students are interacting with the homework in a different way once they've done it a little while. At the beginning, you know, because our homework's supposed to be adaptive, so depending on how they do, they see different problems. At the beginning, they were coming and they were very worried about getting the right answer right away. And, you know, the whole point of it is, even if you don't get it right, you get the help you need in order to succeed. So instead of being worried, they're actually getting that help that they need and actually figuring out what they have, what they may need more help with or what not, instead of trying to get everything right the very first time.
I could say that I've gotten up in the morning and there's nothing more thrilling than waking up 5 o'clock in the morning, my usual time, and getting onto Slack to see, you know, what messages they posted for me the night before, and finding out that they spent 2 hours discussing Rousseau's social contract outside of class. And I swear this happens every single quarter, because this becomes the space that they own and that they talk to each other. So instead of class being limited to the 100 minutes twice a week, class is unlimited, and they are engaged and they're willing to discuss, and they want to discuss with each other, you know, what's the best, you know, what's the best thing to do in the French Revolution, or now, you know, what's Athens going to do when the Spartans are threatening war. So having a communication system that's friendly and useful and doesn't feel like it's something that's just for the teacher to be graded, but is in fact something where they're really talking to each other, you can't beat it for teaching and learning.
Thank you. I do want to leave some time for questions, but before we wrap up the panel discussion, let me ask you this. If you were to give advice to faculty on how to implement either, you know, innovation in general or your particular innovation into the classroom, what would that advice be?
I'll start, and kind of to connect to the last question that you asked as well, which was
student learning.
Student learning. So I think in thinking about 360 photos and creating these immersive experiences, it's exactly that immersion that's really important for the student learning. And so the advice that I would give is that if you have some sort of experience you want your students to have, and the immersive experience in it, whether it's going to an event or going to an exhibition in my case, or traveling to a different place, if you can record that using a very simple 360 camera and then bring it to ATI so that they can help you to stitch it together and create this experience, just record the content so that you can do something with it later. In the project that I was working on, we didn't really know what we were doing when we started. We just took the videos and started putting them together, and then through the genius of ATI, we created this product and experience for the students. So I guess that would be my advice, is just get the material together. You don't have to know what direction you're going with it at first, and then seek out assistance from the experts.
My advice would be, there are a couple projects that I tried. This is just in general. And one was, you talk about learning space. So when you do discussion sections, group the students, and everyone had to move their chairs around. It's really noisy, and then have to put them back. But it'd be nice if we had your nice little chairs with the wheels in these group discussions of 4, and they're helping each other in these discussion sections. Or if it came to online, or trying an online homework system, or developing adaptive learning, or try an open source textbook, just try it. I mean, because so many times where I thought something was not going to work, that's the one that actually worked, and what I was absolutely convinced was going to be successful really fell flat. So my advice is, you know, we're here, we're in academia, we're here to do this. I mean, if we don't do it, then who's going to do it? Just try something that you think is maybe new or just innovative, and like, that's the fun, that's the game, and let's see what happens. So just, I don't want to use somebody else's logos, just do it, and see what happens, because you might be really surprised.
Yeah, my suggestion for trying to teach in active learning space, because now we have, I think, about 15 classrooms around campus that are configured with active learning space furniture and the technology. My advice would be really start simple. Just first really get access to the space, and then there are low technology options for you to really encourage active learning. It doesn't have to be technology based. Just for the fact that you have chairs and tables on wheels, that factor alone can really give you ideas of how you can really get people to work on problems, work on team projects, and working in groups. Just that will be a good thing to have. And then in the feedback that I collected, sometimes people say it's really those whiteboards, the ability that you can use all the wall space to write that allows students to go up to use those whiteboards is a change in the way they teach, because now students feel they can really express themselves with more opportunities.
The thing that I was going to say about virtual reality is the first thing that you don't want to do is try and imagine how it works, because we have spent years trying to figure this out. So if you have a project, if you have an idea that doesn't lend itself to being done in a classroom, you need your students to experience something, to go and do something, you're not exactly sure how you would do that, come talk to us. It is probably the biggest problem that we see with virtual reality is people come and they just want to substitute a situation that already exists that probably would be fairly easy to do in a real person-on-person situation. What virtual reality is going to work really well for is that if, for example, you have a situation where your students need to interact with dinosaurs. Well, that's probably not practical to have happen. But with virtual reality, we can make it happen. So don't worry so much about how we're going to do it or imagining how it would actually be done. Just come and talk to us about it. Just help us to imagine what you're seeing, and we can work with it. The biggest problem that we came into this on the virtual reality is to get away from gameplay. In fact, we have a ban on the word game when we're talking about virtual reality, because if people start thinking about it as a game, then they become very task-oriented, that I've got to go out and I have to find an arrowhead, I have to find a potsherd, I have to find all of these things. And the idea is that in the field, these students would really move very, very slowly and meticulously hunt for these things. We need to build that up in the simulation, and those are the things that we can help you do.
Also, there are different degrees of X reality, and it may be that full-on virtual reality is not the best suited. Like, you have found the 360 video medium to work perfectly well for what you're working with. And so another thing about coming to see us and investigating this is that the original idea of, gee, I want to have goggles on and work with virtual reality can be usurped by something that is more practical for the problem that you bring forth. And it helps to know, it helps to put boundaries on things a little bit. The other thing I'd like to say is that students seem to know a lot more than we ever give them credit for. So things like stitching together the 360 video, you might find that there are students in your class that actually have quite a bit of Adobe experience and can begin to do this as soon as they see how it's working for you, that ATI is helping along. And then it becomes, I think, a whole nother ball game in terms of learning. Instead of participating in the XR, your generating of it has all kinds of outcomes of learning, not about the technology, but you're just closer to it. A personal experience for me is that I do a lot of audio editing. And audio editing causes me to learn more about music than I ever had thought possible, because I work on very microcosmos things and I really get it in my head as to how it sounds. The same thing happens with any kind of participation in the working with the medium, as opposed to just viewing or participating in the medium.
Thank you. I would like now to give a chance to the audience, either the audience here or the audience on Facebook, to ask us questions. The way we are going to do it, if you have a question, I'm going to invite you to please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, and ask the question of our panelists. And James, are you the one who is reading questions from Facebook? Yes. Okay, and James, we will transmit the questions from Facebook. So please don't be shy.
Hi, my name is Rowena, and I'm a staff member. I don't know if my question relates. I think it's mostly what Dr. Mink has said earlier about making sure that books were available to all students. My question is coming from a parent. I've read articles that state, you know, it's better to take notes physically with pen and paper for retention. It might be better to read, you know, a paper book to turn pages versus on some kind of e-reader. When you talk about all of the advances that you've shared, which is amazing, how do you build in that retention component to ensure that the student does retain what they learn?
With regard to the textbook, thank you. With regard to the textbook, when we had adopted it initially, there was no hard copy. And I totally agree. The browsing aspect of paper copy can be very advantageous depending on the student. What's nice is the OpenStax textbook now there is a hard copy, and it's $55, be it bookstore, so it's inexpensive. It's a big textbook, but now the student has the option of having that hard copy at home, and then walking around with the free electronic one. So there is a hard copy to it. I kid them about the electronic. With this electronic, that's absolutely free. I go, it's great. You know, you're standing in line in Disneyland, and turn it, or you're at the beach, and they all laugh at that and all. But so they have the option, and I am concerned about more so in the classroom when it comes to student retention, because it's absolutely true. I believe that a lot of people learn through their hands. That's how the whole idea of outlining and underlining. It's really not just organizing it, but it's letting you're learning it through your hand, the content. So what I think is a bigger issue now is so many people are to PowerPoint in the classroom, and to my knowledge, no human being can do two simultaneous tasks. So they can't read, they can't listen to you, and they can't write down, read at the same time. They're going to do, they still multitasking. To my knowledge, no one can multitask. The only question is some of them could switch faster than others between tasks. So in the classroom, I make a point, I've now gone to PowerPoints to give them a chance to look at it, to read it, and then don't talk over it. So I think the whole idea of learning through the hands is, to me, it's essential. So be it a textbook, it's nice. I had the students raise their hand out of 100 students, how many have purchased a textbook? And I'd say about 20 of them had purchased it totally voluntary, didn't have to. The good thing about the electronic one is the open source is they can print out in PDF and print any content of it because it is totally open source. So if they needed that for a particular chapter or to highlight, they can do that. But I think that is something that we're losing sight of, and we have to remember that a lot of people do learn through writing, through their hands, and we need to be cognitive of that, be it the textbook, hard copy, or lecture material when we're presenting it.
I would like to offer a perspective from communication studies. You know, there is a lot of scared discourse about what these devices are doing to our kids, right? So we read a lot of news about attention span, about how they are changing their learning practices. And what we observe is that, yes, students are changing, but the idea is not to replace one practice with another. The idea is to have several practices aligned, you know, in parallel, and teach students how to experience all of them, rather than replace, for example, handwriting with a computer. Well, we have to teach them both, right? Because they are going to need both. And the trick is, how do we teach them meaningfully to produce meaning, for example, in digital environments, or to have good netiquette in digital environments, or to actually be good citizens in this environment. So the trick is to do both, if it makes any sense.
And I think we also give students a wide variety. They're going to have different professors, have different perspectives and different approaches. I actually capitalize on the fact that they like to be in front of their phones and their computers. So when they're giving speeches, they are actually on Slack at the same time. And I remember I had a dean come and visit the class, and I said, you notice that they're on their phones? She's like, yeah, what is that? I'm like, oh, let me show you. And I showed her that Slack was going on. So while somebody's speaking, somebody else is live blocking, and they're actually talking about. But what I find is they have this tendency to want to go to their device anyway. So if I can occupy that device and make them do what I want them to be doing, then I think they're paying better attention to what I want to have them going on. So I think some of it's just, there's going to be different approaches, and for students to have a wide variety of experiences, find out what works for them. I will have some students who refuse to use Slack during class. They need to just watch and pay attention, but other students, they really want to be active and involved, and so adapting and giving them a variety of tools to work with so they can start to see what works best for them instead of what works best for me, I think is really important.
Other questions?
Yeah, how's it going? My name is Norville. I'm actually from MSI Computers. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with us. We're a high performance PC company, and you guys had talked about virtual reality and enabling it within the environment here. But completely different segment, I guess. It's more so on the sports. Not sure over the last year and a half now that I've been with MSI, esports has taken off, and I kind of wanted to know if you guys have heard anything about that, if that's something that might be implemented here at this college, whereas professional collegiate gaming has become a thing. Universities from all across the nation, I'd say 400 or so now have a collegiate esports team, and a lot of scholarships are being provided in the esports division, as well as grants. I just kind of wanted to see if there's some proactivity surrounding the esports topic here at this college.
I'm familiar with esports, and certainly the content that we create is very similar to the gaming content. But the esports kind of really is growing up in I think on campus out of club organizations. I think there's a number of clubs that are involved in it, but I'm not aware of any university-sponsored teams or events relative to it.
Have you guys actually heard about that, like the whole esports situation that's happening across the nation? Have you gotten any type of understanding? Have you guys heard about that? It's just even K through 12 as well as is being implemented esports, and it's just because it's a great way for maybe students that aren't physically able to get on the field to be able to represent their school in a different way, and it's fun. I mean, it's games, right? But just wanted to say I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Well, I know my alma mater, UCI, has one of the top esports in the nation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the ways to bring in students who have other interests in, but also to realize that, hey, there's another way to use those computer skills and those skills you get. And hopefully they can work on our technology and help with the other classes too.
I have found that the club level of the university is certainly a place where things are generated that end up coming up into something more official, as you're talking about. But that students who are truly interested in something like esports gather together and they become kind of a force. And this is not just esports, but it happens in music technology, and we're actually considering a VR club, as a matter of fact, because the most interested students are doing this on their own time because of their love for a particular technology or subject, and that it really offers a kind of grassroots level at which to start anything like that. So I find it interesting that it is actually rising. I know it's rising in the media. I've seen it and such, but that it's rising to the point where the universities involved, like UCI, are actually like sponsoring it, kind of like a football team, and that's kind of a good thing. It does represent an intellectual pursuit, a different way of obtaining an intellectual pursuit about a subject.
Hello, my name is Charles Rouse. I'm staff over at the Cybersecurity Center at Jack Brown. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if I could present them both right now because it's a couple of professors I'd like to comment on this. First for Dr. Terry Nelson with team collaboration. You know, Slack's blowing up all over the place. I've seen it both in the workspace and recreationally used also. And so I'm wondering, how long have you been using it in the classroom since, as far as your curriculum is going? And how many people do you have actually in your workspace for this kind of thing? And have you needed it beyond, have you needed this platform beyond its free service, right? Are you actually paying into it for this to work successfully for you?
So my classes might be of different sizes. I first started using it winter 17. I'm involved in some other things. I'm not teaching more than one class a quarter. My students, generally a class of 35. Once we start the game, which is usually in beginning of week 4, they will generate at least 10,000 messages by the end of the quarter. So they're talking to each other that much, which is why I know it works. I did have one class, we had 60 students. I was team teaching with another faculty. We actually just started another Slack team so that I could preserve what they'd already written. After you hit 10,000 messages, Slack just starts deleting your old messages and building new ones because I was trying to archive all of that material. I don't know why, but I'm archiving it just in case there's anybody else that wants a project to do. I've got all this data. We just started a new team for the finale. That was the French Revolution game. Even though we end the quarter, my students still contact me on Slack. So I'll see it pop up, you know, students from 2 years ago, and they send me messages via Slack.
So to follow up, is this your second or third quarter doing this, or how long have you been?
Oh no, this is my, 2 years now. I think I'm in my 5th or 6th class using it. So it's been 2 years, over 2 years.
And so to avoid the pay-in feature, we just set up a new workspace that's been working out for you?
Yeah, I use a different workspace for each class because each class needs its own space, and each class is slightly different in terms of what I'm doing with them.
Nice, thank you very much. One more question, if I can. This one is for Dr. Mink with chemistry. Yes, sir. Small Sparrow, I just have a question about this platform, another one, I've already asked you a few. How long have you been using it? Is this actually equivalent to the open source style textbook that you were mentioning earlier? And is this active right now? Is this an active platform that your students are actually using right now? And are you able to assess at this point for, I know it's a complex question, I'm sorry.
I'm going to let Andreas do the assessment thing.
Are you able to assess, how the productivity of this platform for your kids so far?
So you'll get I got to remember all the other questions. So what was the first one?
How long have you been using it? Okay. Is it active right now for your, is it?
So we beta tested it last spring of 2018 in a classroom of 4 units, and currently in 2 classrooms, so 200 students are beta test or doing a full suite of a 10-week Smart Sparrow module homework set. So currently we are right now doing it along with Jonathan Brooks, who's helping develop them for this quarter. So we're going to have that data because the previous quarter was compared, they were doing both. They were doing online non-adaptive and an adaptive, which is kind of nice because they're able to compare it 2 to 2 side by side. But now it's totally, so this quarter, yes, we've implemented a 10-unit module. What was the other?
So post-beta testing, this is the first quarter that is actually
the thing about Smart.
That's the first question.
Yeah, no, then you asked about the open source aspect.
Yes, the textbook.
So everything in Smart Sparrow is from open source, meaning if we have text path learning or video content. The platform is at a cost to the student. However, it is it's $8 a quarter compared to most other online systems where it's about $30 to $35. So in that sense, it's affordable, but we can't say it's totally open source because there is that $8 student fee per quarter, which we hope to eventually develop our own CSU UC community college platform in which it would be totally open source. But we can't say totally open source because there is that student fee of $8 a quarter. The assessment.
So as far as the assessment, from the beta test, which was last spring, we were able to look at kind of their feelings about the two, the old traditional online homework versus the new Smart Sparrow. And there was more like the Smart Sparrow, the adaptive learning, than the traditional. As far as success, whether it was helping them learn, it's kind of hard with the 4 units and not going all the way. So that's really what we're looking at this quarter. I taught the same class last quarter, so we can look at some of the results comparing last quarter without it to this quarter with it and see how that does.
Can you tell me the analytics that you looked at?
Yeah. One of the main things is looking at the analytics and being able to look at how they're answering each one of the questions. And so what we're able to do is look at each question and see whether they're getting it right away, or whether they need help, or if they never get it right. And so that we can really learn, about our homework, because if they're always getting everything wrong, we're probably at the wrong level. Or if they're getting everything right really quick, we can figure that out. But it also helps in the lecture because we can learn, okay, what they're having issues with in the homework, that's something that we're probably not presenting well enough or enough time. And so that's one of the things that we're learning from. And the other thing we're learning as far as the program itself is you learn different ways that students interact with it. For instance, I figured out the other day that they learned how to take the video and speed it up, so it's 2 times speed. So learning those things are things you learn the first time you do it.
The other aspect of the analytics is a lot of talk is about metacognitive learning. So like, does the student realize that they don't understand the material and why they think they don't understand the material? So one of the things that we'd like to develop in the units, and we kind of did this in the first one, is a progression bar where you're saying you think you know the material on a scale, and then at the end, this is what you really knew about it. And so there's a lot of, when it comes to education, they're talking about the whole metacognitive thing, and we'd like to develop that aspect, because we can do that up front, and then say, okay, here's what you did know. And maybe figure out why they think they knew it or didn't know it as a learning tree aspect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Good afternoon. My name is Twyla Evans-Carthen, and I do have a question in regards to how technology in terms of social media can be used to best address social justice and equity.
I don't know about social justice, but if this isn't my field, but the idea is in our units that we could bring in present the topic with some kind of due diligence on the people that are looking at it. So with regard to background, this isn't social justice, but you can do that. You can go ahead and make your content, I'm not talking about writing books on it, but make your content relevant to that population, underrepresented or lower income. You could say, hey, you want to be a STEM student? Click here, and here is, in fact, one of the aspects of our grant is to translate our units into Spanish, so that can go as another aspect, and then could go down to the high school levels as well. So we're trying to, and that's not my field of expertise, present these topics in a culturally relevant and problems in a culturally relevant capacity. So.
Thank you.
I can address that question as well.
Yes, please.
Thanks for your question, Twyla. So the project that I have been working on with the 360 video is really directly addressing this idea of social justice. So the exhibition that we're putting into the 360, which I know you're somewhat familiar with, is called Indignity, and it was an exhibition that was put together by myself along with Anika Anderson in sociology, with documentary photography by Tom McGovern. And the stories that are told in the exhibition are those of Inland Empire residents. So we have 43 residents of Riverside and San Bernardino counties telling their stories about what role difference has played in their lives, how being somehow different from the expected norm of society has given them a different perspective, given them different opportunities, created different challenges. And I think through these technologies in this particular project, but more broadly, I think it's our job to use our resources as academics, as individuals at the university, use these resources that we have access to in order to tell the stories of these individuals and uplift their stories, whereas they might not otherwise be told. And that's specific to this project, but I think more broadly, we can use these resources and use what it is that we're doing in order to achieve those social justice goals. So thank you.
Awesome.
I would say that on Slack, one of the advantages, I mean, one of the reasons that I use the live blogging and allow students to use it in class is that we have to recognize that our students may have different social mores about when they can speak up, how they can speak up, and also some students are not just shy about speaking and perhaps better at writing, but also need time to reflect and to think about how they're going to say what it is that they have to say. I think that we, in the university, the more we can find spaces that allow people to say what they have to say and to acknowledge and recognize that as being important, that breaks down barriers and allows this community to be richer, and that the learning experience is richer. So for me, that Slack does that.
Awesome.
Another thing that we're doing right now is we're using technology on the Sports Ability Festival. And although there's a lot of different technologies being used, the one that I'm familiar with is that we have created a virtual reality experience where there's a person that is able to use a wheelchair and has been able to do, I think, a double or a triple flip now. And this person is really proactive in telling otherly abled people that, look, there shouldn't be any limitations in what you can do. So what we've done is we've created a virtual reality experience where somebody can put on the goggles and they can have the experience of riding down a ramp and then doing a flip in a wheelchair. And so in some small way get to experience that. I believe another thing that we're going to be working on is an underwater experience that they're going to be able to have. So in that way we can allow a person to have an experience that they might not normally be able to experience.
Awesome. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I think you'll agree with me that this was an hour very well spent. We heard so many interesting things. Please join me in thanking these amazing innovators for their wisdom and their contribution to student learning.